I woke up to a miracle today. Triggers fade as I find my way. No judgment to lead astray. In this peaceful state I'll stay.
Welcome back. We're continuing our exploration into the Course in Practice, and today we're looking at Lesson 348. And this one, it presents a theme that sounds simple on the surface, but it's, I think, profoundly challenging for most of us to really accept.
It is.
It's the idea that we have no actual real cause for anger or for fear.
Yeah, that's a powerful place to start. And what's interesting about this lesson is how it approaches anger and fear. It doesn't try to get us to figure out why we feel them.
Right. Not the backstory.
No, not the trigger, not what happened this morning that set you off. It just makes this blanket statement about their non-existence at the level of cause.
So it's like it bypasses the symptom entirely.
It does. It goes straight to the foundation and basically says, the reason for your fear, it just isn't there.
You know, in some of the earlier lessons, we might have spent a lot of time looking at a misperception.
Analyzing it.
Yeah, how we misinterpreted something someone said or judged a situation incorrectly. This lesson, it's not asking us to reinterpret the events.
Yeah.
It's asking us to acknowledge something else entirely. This absolute presence of God and the immediate sufficiency of grace.
And that reason for no cause is completely and totally independent of the world's conditions. That's the part that can be so hard to grasp.
What do you mean?
Well, it means we don't need a better job or a calmer political climate or a clean bill of health for this truth to be true.
I see. So the reason isn't out there.
It isn't. The reason is grounded entirely in the present state. God is here right now, and because God is here, we are not alone. We cannot be alone. That's the whole premise right there.
So I think our theme for this exploration then is really going to be sufficiency.
Yes.
We want to consider what it means to acknowledge that truly nothing essential is missing, ever, even when our lives feel messy or difficult or just plain unfinished.
Which is most of the time for many of us.
Right. We walk around with this sort of feeling of lack, don't we? As if the universe owes us one more piece of the puzzle before we can really, truly relax.
And this lesson says that piece is already here. It's not coming in the mail.
So it's asking us to look at that feeling of lack, the one that drives so much of our striving and our need to defend ourselves, and to question if it's accurate.
It's not asking us to deny the feeling. The feeling is a feeling. But it's asking us to question the conclusion we jump to from that feeling, the conclusion that we're in danger or that we're unsupported.
It's a subtle but really important shift in perspective. And as we explore this, if you want to share how these ideas are meeting you in your own life, especially how you navigate that feeling of lack while trying to remember sufficiency, well, you can always share your thoughts with us. Just send an email to acim@worldharmonyproject.org. We really do love hearing from you.
So let's prepare our minds a little bit. Let's just receive the lesson directly.
I'll read the first stanza now. Lesson 348. I have no cause for anger or for fear, for you surround me. And in every need that I perceive, your grace suffices me. Father, let me remember, you are here and I am not alone. Surrounding me is everlasting love. I have no cause for anything except the perfect peace and joy I share with you. What need have I for anger or for fear? Surrounding me is perfect safety. Can I be afraid when your eternal promise goes with me? Surrounding me is perfect sinlessness. What can I fear when you created me in holiness as perfect as your own?
God's grace suffices us in everything that he would have us do, and only that we choose to be our will as well as his. So when we start this exploration, I think we have to start with that concept of cause itself.
Okay.
The real utility of this lesson comes from how it removes that inner obligation we feel to justify or explain why we're angry or afraid.
Right. We feel like we need a good reason.
So much of our personal work, whether it's therapy or some other spiritual practice, often involves this long detective-like process of tracing our feelings back to some root cause.
To trauma or our childhood or something that happened last week.
And we have this belief that if we can just name the source of the anger, I'm angry because my boundaries were violated, or, I'm afraid because I don't have enough money in the bank.
Then the emotion feels valid.
It feels justifiable and therefore real. We give the anger or the fear legitimacy by finding what looks like an appropriate cause for it in the world. But the Course just shifts the whole focus. When it says anger and fear have no cause, it's speaking to their ultimate eternal reality.
It's not saying we just misunderstood the event.
No, it's not saying, oh, you just misjudged that person. It's going deeper. It asserts that at the level of your created being, these emotions, they're simply unjustified because nothing truly essential has been damaged. Nothing truly essential has been lost or threatened. So when we ask about the cause for anger, we're asking, is anger a real thing? Is it a necessary byproduct of reality?
Or is it just a mistake?
Just a mistaken interpretation of a reality that is actually fundamentally already whole. And the lesson says, without any hesitation, it's the latter.
It's a mistake.
A mistaken perception. That's all. Anger and fear are always, always symptoms of believing that something foundational is missing. They require this underlying deep-seated conviction that we're alone, that we're vulnerable, or that we are incomplete.
So we might believe safety is gone.
Or that support has been withdrawn. Or that love is conditional and we just failed the test. Or that we've totally lost control.
But the lesson just comes in and counters that entire belief structure.
It asserts that none of those essential things are actually missing.
Because of the presence of God.
The presence is the surrounding condition. And because it's surrounding, it has to be everywhere. And if that presence is everywhere, well, then the idea of a justifiable lack that can't exist.
Let's focus on that line, you surround me. That feels like the anchor here.
It is the anchor of the entire lesson. And notice it's presented as a current, present condition.
I think this is where a lot of us can get tripped up because the external experience is just so convincing. We might feel really immediate physical sensations of fear, that tightness in the chest, the shortness of breath when, we get an unexpected bill or hear a sudden loud noise in the night.
Of course.
The feeling is absolutely present and it feels very real to the body. But the lesson asks us to question the foundational assumption behind it.
It asks us to recognize that the reaction is a habit of the ego. It's like an alarm bell ringing in a house that's actually truly fireproof.
So the feeling is present.
The feeling is present, yes, but the lesson suggests that the underlying support, the absolute safety of our being, is still completely intact. The foundation hasn't moved an inch.
Okay, so let's make this practical. For the person listening who might be feeling intense fear or anger right now, maybe they're facing a tough confrontation at work or deep financial uncertainty. How do we acknowledge the legitimate distress of the experience while still trying to affirm, I have no cause?
The Course helps us here by making a distinction between the content of the world and the cause in the mind.
The content being the confrontation, the bill.
The lesson is not denying that the confrontation is difficult or that the bill is unwelcome. It's denying that these external situations have the power to define your inherent safety or your worth.
The distress is real.
But its cause is the conclusion we draw about ourselves from the event. The conclusion that I must be lacking or I must be unsafe if this is happening to me.
I'm not being asked to pretend the external difficulty doesn't exist.
Not at all.
I'm being asked to recognize that my deepest, most essential self is not actually involved in the danger.
The ego perceives a threat to its very fragile structure, but the self God created is perfectly, eternally safe, surrounded by love.
So the underlying principle here is that we can only be angry or fearful if we believe we've successfully pulled off the impossible.
Which is?
Separating ourselves from our source of safety. If we can accept even for a moment the premise that we are perpetually surrounded, then anger and fear are revealed as illogical.
Even when they're very strongly felt.
Right. They become reactions that have lost their original mistaken purpose.
Let's move into that second section, the one dealing with sufficiency, because this flows directly from what we were just talking about.
Okay.
We spend a huge amount of mental energy classifying threats and measuring what we think we lack. We use anger and fear as markers, don't we? They tell us, this is inappropriate, or I must escape this absence.
They're like our internal alarm system.
And this lesson comes along and basically short-circuits the entire mechanism. It does that by declaring both the threat and the lack to be illusory.
It's not just managing the threat, it's saying the threat itself isn't real.
The lesson specifically describes 3 conditions that surround us.
Everlasting love, perfect safety, and perfect sinlessness.
And the most profound part of this, I think, is the insistence that nothing needs to be earned or repaired for the surrounding state to be true.
We don't have to become more loving first.
Or achieve some level of moral perfection or fix all our past mistakes.
This brings us to that core phrase about provision. In every need that I perceive, your grace suffices me.
Let's stay with that for a moment.
Okay. In every need that I perceive.
It acknowledges our experience. It's saying grace is sufficient even when the need still feels powerfully, overwhelmingly present.
It's not a promise that the external difficulty, the lack of money, the argument, is going to immediately dissolve.
The Course emphasizes that grace is already sufficient right now, which means that the immediate, personal, often intense feeling of lack, that gut-wrenching sense that we are failing or that something vital is missing.
That feeling doesn't align with reality.
The subjective feeling of need is a temporary shadow. It doesn't define the objective truth of our condition.
That is a very challenging concept for the human mind, isn't it? We're so oriented toward immediate material evidence. If I perceive a lack, I feel this intense compulsion to go out and fill it.
Of course, that's the ego's survival instinct.
But this lesson is asking us to accept that the essential lack is never real. So let's take an example. If I perceive a need for a specific solution, say, I need this particular job to pay my rent, and that job doesn't materialize, how is grace still sufficient in that perceived need?
Grace here functions as the perfect assurance that the truth of who you are cannot be compromised by that external situation.
So even if I don't get the job,
Even then, if we accept the idea of shared will, which we'll talk more about later, then any action that is required of us, searching for another job, maybe resting, maybe waiting, is fully supported. Grace is the internal calm and certainty that allows us to undertake those necessary actions without the corrosive pressure of fear and desperation.
the sufficiency lies in the unwavering love and safety that ensures that whatever happens,
The outcome will ultimately serve our highest good, our awakening.
grace is the perfect container for the experience. The external difficulty happens within the container of sufficiency. So the difficulty might require action, but the internal condition doesn't require frantic defense.
Anger and fear thrive on the conviction that something absolutely essential, our very lifeblood, our worth, our ability to survive, is missing and must be fought for or fled from.
And the lesson just quietly says that conviction is inaccurate.
Even when the emotion is running at full tilt, that conviction is the power source for anger and fear, and the idea of sufficiency just pulls the plug.
Let's think about how common it is to experience these persistent negative feelings, even when we've done all the right things to feel safe. We might have savings in the bank, good relationships, a healthy lifestyle, and yet this anxiety about the future can still creep in.
Oh, absolutely.
The Course seems to be suggesting that this anxiety is not a reasonable response to a perceived risk, but rather a stubborn insistence on the belief that we are separate and alone.
If we are truly, fully surrounded by love, then there can be no legitimate risk to the self that love created. The lesson isn't promising a sudden magical shift to perfect calm where all worldly troubles just disappear.
It's offering something deeper.
A much deeper assurance. The emotions of anger and fear lack a true cause because nothing essential to our being is ever, for even a single moment, absent.
And that brings us really beautifully into the section I think is so important for dismantling the ego's defense system.
The concept of perfect sinlessness.
Yeah.
And that term sinlessness often carries such heavy baggage, doesn't it? From traditional religion, we get this idea of moral purity or behavioral perfection.
Right, like you have to be a saint.
But in the context of the Course, and especially in this lesson, perfect sinlessness is used purely as a statement of perfect inherent safety.
That is such an important clarification. Because if sinlessness is our reality, then it means nothing is fundamentally or permanently wrong with us. There's no original defect, no stain on our soul, no built-in flaw that we have to spend our entire lives trying to correct or hide. We are created holy.
And the implication for our daily experience is just vast. If we can accept that we are perfectly safe and entirely undefiled, well, then what is there left to defend?
And nothing.
If we're whole, we don't need to shield ourselves from criticism. We don't need to protect ourselves from attack. We don't need to constantly guard our reputation or our perceived worth.
I think this speaks directly to the common need for anger. So often, anger is the result of feeling like we have to defend a position. Maybe we're defending a boundary or our past actions or just the simple rightness of our perspective. We feel we have to constantly stand guard to prevent the world from diminishing us. When we recognize that safety is inherent, the function of anger changes completely. Anger and fear transform from these vital tools into what they really are.
Which is
Simple, momentary misinterpretations of the surrounding reality. We suddenly realize we're still carrying this heavy sword and shield in a place of perfect peace.
I love that image. And the lesson reinforces this by grounding our safety in our creation. When you created me in holiness, as perfect as your own. The external world, which is inherently dualistic and always shifting, cannot possibly undo a reality that was established in eternity.
It's remarkably freeing to realize that nothing is required of us to become holy.
Only to recognize it.
Just to recognize the holiness that is already there. And that realization frees up all the mental energy we spent defending, blaming, and projecting our own sense of guilt outward onto others.
And that release of energy, that's what leads us directly to the final stanza, which is all about the choice we must make to align with this established reality.
So this brings us to that closing statement about choice. That we choose to be our will as well as His. The Course is never about compelling behavior, is it? It's always an invitation.
Always. An invitation to align our thinking with the truth that is already established.
The idea of choosing shared will feels central to the practice.
In practical terms, it means letting go of the ego's requirements for peace. The ego insists that peace can only be attained after I get the promotion, after the medical test comes back clear, after this relationship conflict is finally settled.
There's always one more thing.
Always. But when we choose shared will, we are essentially saying, I will allow love and safety to define this moment rather than the temporary problem.
We choose to align our belief system with the established reality, that we are surrounded by love, rather than clinging to the temporary emotional projection of lack.
Which is where anger and fear come from in the first place. This choice is the simple, practical application of the entire lesson.
If we can accept that we are surrounded by love and perfect safety now,
We are choosing to think with God rather than thinking with the ego about what we lack.
I think many listeners might interpret choosing shared will as a kind of passive acceptance of external circumstance.
That's a common misunderstanding.
If my life is objectively painful, say, I'm trapped in a very difficult environment, doesn't this lesson just ask me to sit down and accept the pain?
Not at all. Choosing shared will is the decision to accept the reality of our identity and our safety, which then informs the action we take. We aren't choosing to accept the world's pain. We're choosing to remember the self that cannot be harmed by the world's pain. If the shared will is for our complete peace and joy, then our actions will naturally reflect that peace.
So alignment might actually look like making a necessary change in the external world.
It might.
But that change is initiated from a place of spiritual sufficiency, not from frantic fear or desperate anger.
Yes. Instead of reacting against the pain, we act from the truth of our being.
And the lesson provides the ultimate assurance here.
God's grace is sufficient in everything that He would have us do. That means whatever external action we undertake.
Whether it's having a difficult conversation or stepping away from a toxic situation, or maybe just resting and being still,
That action is already fully supported by grace.
which confirms that we don't need to fear the outcome of our efforts or feel anxiety about our own inadequacy.
Failure in the world's terms, like a project falling apart or a goal not being met, can never, ever compromise the deeper, perfect safety of our being.
The sufficiency is not a guarantee of worldly success.
It's a guarantee of spiritual safety, regardless of the world's shifting outcomes. We don't have to manage the entire universe. We only need to align our will with the peace that is already here.
This choice profoundly impacts how we perceive our relationship with anger. We can allow that momentary reaction to pass through us without granting it the dignity of a true cause.
The feeling is like mist passing over a mountain. The mist is real, you can see it, but the mountain remains solid and entirely unaffected.
The feeling of anger or fear is the mist,
And the eternal reality of our being, surrounded by love and safety, is the mountain.
and this requires practice. It's the daily choice to remember that we are surrounded by love and not alone. That's why the lesson begins with, Father, let me remember you are here.
It's a call for remembrance, not achievement. Every single time we get angry or feel fear, we are making an unconscious decision that we are alone, that we are lacking, and that we are vulnerable.
And this lesson is the gentle correction to that mistake.
Just a gentle correction.
When we're faced with the world's chaos or just the immediate anxiety of a personal problem, it can feel incredibly demanding to hold on to this truth. I have no cause for fear.
But the lesson assures us that the truth is the constant, while the fear is the temporary variable.
It's the ultimate invitation to drop the armor.
It is. We are asked to recognize that the armor of defense, which we call anger, and the shield of avoidance, which we call fear, were never actually needed.
Because the perfect protection was built into our creation from the very beginning. So let's just summarize the ground we've covered in this exploration. We looked at lesson 348 and its central claim that anger and fear have no cause.
Right. And this is because God is eternally present, love surrounds us, and nothing essential to our true self is ever missing.
We moved away from trying to analyze the emotional reactions themselves and focused instead on recognizing the already established conditions of sufficiency, perfect safety, and grace.
And this recognition is the mechanism. It's the way that anger and fear lose their claim on our minds.
Thank you for joining us in this exploration. We are really grateful you are here and willing to question these ingrained assumptions about lack and threat that can govern so much of our daily lives.
And we always welcome you to share any questions or experiences you have with us as you work with these ideas. You can reach us by email at acim@theworldharmonyproject.org.
And as we close, let's just sit for a moment with the simplicity of the truth presented today.
I have no cause for anger or fear because I am not alone and nothing I truly need is missing.